Every faculty you have, your power of thinking or of moving your limbs from moment to moment, is given you by God. C.S. Lewis. Good morning. You usually don't see me doing any of this early in the mornings, so that's going to be weird, huh? Now, this one could be more of a podcast. You don't really need to watch anything. It's just going to be me talking and giving my thoughts out. This is because of something that has been happening for a while and made me reflect a little bit, because every action I take, I want to reflect on it and whether it was, I guess, necessary. So before I start, the usual, I'll get to the quote of the day in a second. My quote from a lot of different people doesn't necessarily reflect whether I think that quote is whether it reflects me. I think it reflects more of the topic that I'm talking about. So if you see a quote and you go, Ebon said that quote, he must really believe in this or that. No, it's not a belief. It's just something that pertains to the topic and that's useful. You can always join me on Zoom. There's no special access to any of my content. My content is always free. You're not going to have a special Patreon access where if you pay a certain amount, you get access to specific or special content, or I'll probably put like an hour's worth of my content on YouTube or anywhere else, and then you have to access this little special area where you have to pay to get access to the rest of it. Now, all of this is always going to be free. And you can always come on in and have a conversation with me. In order to do that, I probably I'm going to to really start needing some support. I've had $0 of cryptocurrency donations for over 16 months. You can always donate via Bitcoin, Vertcoin, verify how much I've received by checking the blockchain. For my Bitcoin, 3 transactions, 2 of them from me from my GoFundMe to Susie Dawson when she needed it. You can always see a video of that. And of course, Vertcoin, which there are no transactions. You can always do a Google Super Chat, which Google takes a big chunk out of it. Or you can donate via PayPal.me, which I will disclose on the first of the month how much I'm making. That way people know. And how much I've made total since September 22nd, 2019, when I've put that up. So if you do not have any money to donate, Zen Garcia has had a contest for a while where if you prove the globe Earth, you can get $15,000. And someone else has tried to obtain that from him through court and failed. But maybe he didn't do it right. So if you want, it should be easy money, right? Everyone believes that the Earth is a globe. Get it from Zen Garcia, $15,000, and maybe just donate to me a 10% finder's fee or something. Okay, so we'll see if anyone comes on chat. I doubt it. It's really early in the morning for most people. So this morning, and for a couple of mornings now, so my son, who's 2 years old, getting close to 2.5, was really acting up. Terrible twos, right? Every parent has gone through it, except I would say that not to blame my wife, not at all, but she's a little bit more lenient on him than so with Leela, our daughter, who's now 6. And I'm seeing it and I've recognized it, and Now with human behavior, same thing with training a dog or raising kids. You've got a system of behaviors that you want to modify. For example, if let's start with dogs. If a dog is doing something good that you like, you're going to reward the dog, give him a treat. If the dog is doing something bad, like peeing on the carpet, you're going to want to do either a negative reinforcement or you're going to do a punishment. Now, punishment is just kind of the extreme, the thing that you would definitely not want done to you. Usually, most people think of it as like a spanking or something like that. The thing is, it's how long you want to take as far as being able to demonstrate to the dog the behavior you do not want. So if you regularly give it treats because it does something good, it'll understand that. If you take away something, and maybe it's punishment, negative reinforcement is taking away treats or not letting the dog out for a walk that you would usually do, etc. But sometimes your behavior from their behavior elicits bad behavior in return. So it's just kind of this cycle. So you've got to make sure that you apply some type of negative reinforcement in the correct way. Otherwise, you might elicit a more negative behavior from your negative reinforcement. And how do you deal with that type of thing? So what I've usually been doing, and it has been working, even though my wife hates it, is I'll yell really loud, "Hey," or "Roland," right? And the thing is, my son knows that he does not like my reaction to his bad behavior, so he stops. My wife does not like it. She'll yell at him, but not in the way that I do. And so I'm reflecting. It's necessary from my point of view. Wife won't have a discussion. She doesn't like discussing things. She just says, "It's wrong, don't do it." And I'm saying, no. It's the same thing when she had her first dog. And the dog would not listen to her. The dog would pee, would chew things up, whatever. I started training the dog when we got together, and the dog was able to be fine. We were able to let the dog loose when on walks in the woods, because the dog would be able to listen before it never would. That sort of thing. Or before she would go to work, she would put all these things on her bed, because the dog would keep going on her bed when she left, and close the door to the room. And I always think that's just kind of not a good thing. I feel like it's like a dog is getting punished every day, doesn't realize that it's being punished just because she doesn't want dogs on her furniture. So it's more of a step is like, okay, you have to get involved a little bit more. When the dog gets up on the bed, let the dog know that they're not supposed to get up on the bed. And you get back home, you see the dog's up on the bed, or you can feel that there's warm. You say no, because the dog will know. Dogs check in to see your reaction because it knows what it's doing. And then just say no, and pretty much the dog understands. It's kind of the same thing. We don't have to go into a more larger punishment area or start off with the punishment, but that way the dog understands why it's being punished, instead of, "I don't know why I'm being punished all the time," type of thing. But there's a specific moment when you can react that reinforces the the dog or the kid or the person as to, hey, every time I do this type of behavior, I'm expecting something. I noticed that, hey, if nothing is being done about it, I'll keep doing it. You can just kind of see the same thing with society, and governments. If the government is doing something bad and people don't care and don't do anything about it, they'll keep doing it. It's just it's more of, it's not reinforced behavior. It's just saying that, hey, there's no repercussions, so I'll just keep doing it. Politicians, cops, judges, people in authority, they recognize this. They go, hey, people are getting away with it, and the public don't care. They'll just reelect me back in. I'll just do the same behavior. Why change? There's nothing negative that'll come about it, and it's just basically a positive. I can just keep doing what I'm doing, and no one can stop me. No one tries to. So why stop? So it's that same concept. Now, when we get into the psychology of humans and dogs, whatever, it's more of the psychology of nature in many ways. Except you have to have some type of being, an animal or something that will be perceptive to this training of reinforcement, whether it's positive or negative. Now, when you get into religion and religious deities, and we're gonna kind of move over to a couple of different ones. For example, majority of people have this Christian type of view, or similar type of view, where there's a heaven or a hell based on your behaviors on Earth. And for many, they don't believe in reincarnation, so let's just leave it at, you've got one life. You either follow the set of rules set by the religious deity, God, and you go to heaven, and if you don't, you go to hell. And heaven is eternal pleasure, heaven is eternal pleasure, hell is eternal torment. The thing is, what is the accomplishment of God? And this is where the quote of the day by C.S. Lewis comes into play. C.S. Lewis quotes, "Every faculty you have, your power of thinking or of moving your limbs from moment to moment, is given you by God. Therefore, we should have to assume that there is a motive behind God's teachings, God's guidelines, God's laws, whatever, in the Christian religion." So if the idea is, hey, okay, you follow these set of rules on Earth and you go to heaven, what is the purpose of that? And what is the purpose of, well, you didn't listen to me, but I wasn't the one who told you. I told someone else had to tell you, or someone else wrote it down, and you had to listen to those things on, and just had to believe people, regardless of me telling you personally. And if you don't do that, you go to hell and you're eternally punished. What's the point of that? In the end run, it's difficult to fathom, and people in Christian spheres will say, well, God does as God wills, etc. But again, when we're assuming that we have the same faculties as God, since we're created by God, in that religious view, then therefore we should have the same faculty. Which also in turn, there's this weird baptism or Baptist denomination where they say, well, one of the things is God created you and God created you flawed, and your thinking will be flawed. So if you try to question God's motives, etc., well, your thinking's already flawed, so you can't. Well, I don't think that's the case. I'm always at the premise where you can't really understand anyone else or anything else if you don't understand yourself. And that's probably the first and foremost thing. Is if you don't understand yourself, you're never going to understand anyone else or anything else. So to think of something as far as, well, is there any type of feedback system? That's the important thing in regarding the psychology of religious deities, is the feedback system. When there's something where human to human interaction, human to animal interaction, etc., there's always a feedback system. As given that certain moment when you do something, is there any repercussions from others? And that happens universally. Someone does something to you, say someone steals from you, or someone hits you, that what you do is going to be different than anyone else. And what you do in return will dictate what that person does to you in the future. For example, let's say I just hit you really hard in your stomach, and I just laugh, see what you do, and you don't do anything. So I just keep hitting you in your stomach. Well, you're not doing anything, and you still don't do anything. I know I could keep hitting you in your stomach, and you're not going to do anything in return. That's how bullies kind of do things. I'm not saying I would do that, or this is just an example. Now, say I hit you in your stomach and you took out your gun and you shot me in the leg. Well, am I going to punch you in the stomach again? No, I don't think so, because I don't want to get shot in the leg. So what you did in return from that moment is the feedback system. I hit you in your stomach, waited for a reaction. Well, there was nothing happening to me, so I know I could do it again in the future with no repercussions. Well, say one day I hit you in your stomach and you take out a gun and shoot me in the leg. Well, I'm not going to punch you in the stomach anymore, because now I know, well, there's negative repercussions in doing it. There's no advantage to me. So when we're comparing this type of feedback system with religious deities, we don't have any of that. We go through our entire lives, and as far as the Christian religion goes, our feedback system, it happens at the point of death, the aftermath of death, in which we have no idea what happens. And so if there's only one life, we don't learn anything from it, right? It's like, well, you're going to hell because you didn't do as I told you to do, as written by others who were written in a book, which I didn't personally tell you, type of thing. Or the Christian God will go, oh, okay, you did really well. You believed in everything, and you had tremendous faith, and therefore you go to heaven. That's your feedback system. You don't have a gauge as to whether you're doing something right or wrong, whether God dictated it or not, or because anyone else could just taken that advantage of that God, and said, well, you shouldn't have listened to that guy. You knew it was wrong, but it's in the book. Well, anyone could have written that book. It could have just been bad translation. It's like, well, why didn't you just come and personally tell me? Well, I'm going to personally tell billions of people. No, it's just easier if I write a book and assume everyone reads it. So logically, the psychology of the Christian God is a little bit perplexing and not logical. And therefore, if our faculties are the same of that, well, the faculties of that God is probably a little bit suspect. So, but that's just picking on one religion. Let's go to another. Let's talk about Hinduism or Buddhism, the idea of reincarnation, and that if you do good in this life, you follow certain doctrines or guidelines, that you're going to have a better life in your next life. Or if you do horrible things, you're just going to have a horrible life, maybe come back as a donkey or a cat or something else in your next life, until you get going in all cylinders and you're a human male, and you do everything good, then you can become enlightened. The problem with that is the premise of again, it's the feedback system. We don't know after we die or whether we become reincarnated to something else, because right now, whether we've been reincarnated or something else, is we don't remember it. We don't have memories of our previous lives or previous reincarnations. And that's the problem with that concept of that religious idea of reincarnation, is that, well, it would be helpful in a feedback system where if we remembered our lives as, say, a frog, and we didn't like the idea of living as a frog, therefore we want to be better. And again, how does the frog live a good life in order to become a human again? Anyways, that idea would make more sense if, as humans, as one of the upper reincarnations, we would remember. Instead, everyone has amnesia from the previous lives, and it's the same idea of Gnosticism and a couple of others, where we have lived other lives, but we just can't remember. We have amnesia. Well, the premise is the same. We don't have this feedback system, where it would make more sense if we could remember, and we do remember all our previous lives. Therefore, we would understand what we did wrong to be where we are at now, or what more things we need to do to be better. So, and that's again, religious, not just religious deities, but religion in general, is you don't get this feedback system until you're dead and done. And then something happens to you afterwards. And whether it's one and done or reincarnation, the feedback system would make more sense if we remembered all the things that happened to us in the previous reincarnation. Therefore, we understand what we need to do to change. But instead, we get to this point of, well, we won't know, so therefore, I don't know. There's no logic behind the reincarnation idea. If every reincarnation we have amnesia. Now, there is the other approach, which is going through the idea of evolution and nihilism, where nothing happens to you after you're dead. It's not like a Christian religion, or there's no reincarnation. When you're dead, and therefore just do whatever you want in life. So that's all there is. Now, the problem with that is, if we're going by the evolutionary standpoint, well, every death should be a measure of some type of gain for the previous generation of your species environment. For example, I was born in America. I lived in America most of my life. I have family raised in America. Therefore, when I died, there should be some benefit towards the species of humans that are in my area, America. That's noticeable. So whatever behaviors I had and didn't change, that should process into the collective locality of, hold on, give me a second here. Sorry about that. Excuse me. All right. Therefore, every death is just an idea of, okay, he passed his genetic markers on to his kids. The kids, up at that point, if it's all just based on nature and not nurture, well then it doesn't matter what happens afterwards. So basically, all my genetic markers passed on to my kids. My kids have it now. Doesn't matter what I do. The genes are there, and it's basically whatever changes in the environment changes their abilities as far as what they pass on later. The thing is, we would see this gradual change throughout generations as far as the locality, but the thing is, and the culture. But the thing is, we don't see that from the genetic side. What we see that is from the cultural side, and the cultural side is dictated by the society, and the society is dictated by what is presented to the masses. So all of our cultural and societal changes occur at the top level based upon the media, the people who are in the top trend of celebrities, politics, activism, materialism as far as like fashion, collectibles, and maybe even credentials, for example, maybe the academia type of gain, how people perceive you, basically social media in some ways. So how they are presented to others from what they do and how they act. And so what we would end up having, we wouldn't have all these big conglomerate, just big massive blobs of the same. What we should see is from every every state, every town, every locality, just vast differences of behavior. Instead, we see just vast sameness in behavior. So it doesn't matter how I act within my locality, it's not going to allow others to act in that same way. But it's the way I act, and people who see me and interact with me, it might change them in some ways. So it's not a genetic pass on. It's more of a nurture environmental factor that permeates to everyone else. I mean, otherwise we would have a lot of different thinking. But of course, I could be wrong, because there's the idea that, well, you want to go along with the herd because the herd is safe. Therefore, if you differ from the herd, even if it's the truth, you're just going to be worse off, which we do happen to see. For example, the idea of flat Earth versus globe Earth. Globe Earth is definitely a lie, because the ones who are trying to prove it are faking things, and it's easy to point out the faking of it. And therefore, well, to assume that they are lying because they are faking it, then it has to be the opposite. Well, you get attacked, you get ostracized. So, and that's just one point of it. There's also the religious point, where if you believe in one thing, and people won't listen to you. Well, if this person ain't Christian, why I gotta listen to this guy? If that person ain't a Gnostic, why do I gotta listen to that guy? If that guy's an atheist, he's got nothing good ideas, nothing to say, nothing that'll make sense. And we all have, a lot of people, majority again, have that mentality is you're in that lump, and if you're in that lump, well, I'm just going to disregard you because you're in that lump, you're in that category. And we fall victim to this everywhere. The thing is, as far as the idea of following the herd is being beneficial, and thus me knowing that following the herd is beneficial, why do I choose not to follow the herd? And same with everyone else. It's like, why don't I just act like I am a Christian, even though I don't believe in the Christian doctrine? Because that way it would be easier for me. Why don't I believe in the globe Earth, even though I don't believe in, and I know that they're lying? Why don't I just do that? Because it's easier for me just to follow the herd. What's the point of, what's the benefit of me not following the herd. And so I am at this conundrum, and many others are too. It's like, why take the more difficult path when you already know that following the herd mentality is the easiest outcome of your life, right? So if you follow this nihilistic view or atheistic view that nothing happens after your life, so you could do whatever you want, then you would pick the easiest path to live until your death. But the thing is, some of us, me, for instance, we understand that, hey, that's a possibility and that makes the most sense. Yet why aren't I doing that? It doesn't make sense in the evolutionary standpoint, the genetic standpoint. And genetically, if we're identical, at least 50% to our siblings, or even more, or more similarly to our parents, then why don't we just follow basically what our parents do, with disregard to the environmental factors? So what's with the anomalies? What's with the differences in behavior exhibited by siblings and offspring? Especially when they understand that the easiest path is the herd mentality. Just go with the herd. And that's also a problem with evolution, is if it's easier to go along with the herd, there's no reason to change until environments change. Then maybe a few will veer off and say, hey, this is probably a little bit better, and then maybe the herd will then follow those individuals. Doesn't the problem with that again is there's excuse me. The problem with that is, well, how you won't know which one is right until, well, they're dead. Because basically, if it's survival of the fittest, you either survive or you don't. And if you survive, well, you're the fittest. Well, if you don't survive, well, you did something that wasn't fit to survive. So you would have to veer off in some point where it's advantageous. So where is this advantage of those who don't follow the herd as far as in the current time that we have, and even in previous times? We could look back with written history, with the official narratives of written history and stuff like that, and go, okay, there was all these people who stood up, went against the system, tried to do better, tried to leave a better mark upon the world, and they got assassinated, they got murdered, they got imprisoned. All these things that happen that's to them that have been negative. Why would people continue to do so when there's the herd does not follow that mentality? The herd does not follow the Martin Luther King Jr.'s who have just peaceful protest and actually taking charge of changing the system. Just think of anyone who have tried changing the world for the better. It doesn't matter what their belief is, whatever. It's just that active change for people's behavior to change, or societal or people at large to change. More of a control system change, really, is what it is you want the control system to change, and therefore, in order for it to change, you're going to have to give a feedback system. So if the government is corrupt, well, you're going to stand up to them, either in arms or with action, with a lot of people. If you're not armed, you just go with a lot of people, and just start yelling at them, tell them to change, or you're gonna do something, right? It's like that fear factor. Well, nobody wants to be yelled at, no one wants to be threatened, therefore they'll probably stop being corrupt, or they'll threaten someone else to say, hey, the person's corrupt, why don't you do something about it? If you don't do something about it, we will. Well, then they're gonna probably do something about it. Now we don't have that anymore. Basically, it's like, hey, if you yell at the system, you're going to go to jail, you're going to go to prison, you're going to get fired from your job, you're going to be ostracized, so therefore don't yell. So therefore we've got this corrupt system going on within positions of power because, well, you're doing something illegal. When is it illegal? Isn't it illegal to be corrupt? I mean, isn't it more worse to have people in power doing things wrong than people who aren't in power doing things wrong? Because at least when people who aren't in power doing things wrong, the justice can be applied. But if there are people in power doing certain things wrong, well, justice sometimes doesn't get applied to them, and therefore nothing happens to them. So what happens then? Well, you're gonna have to take to the streets, right? Or take it to them personally. But that doesn't happen because now there's repercussions from the system itself. So no one's gonna follow suit because it's not beneficial for them to go out of their way in order to change a corrupt system because they're not following the herd. Now, again, there are certain individuals, activists out there, and they go, hey, system is corrupt. We need to keep speaking out about all this corruption have people do something about it. And everyone's like, okay, go do something about it. Well, I can't do something about it. Do you think it's good? They go, no. Well, let's go do something about it. Well, no. Well, why not? We're not going to change anything if we don't do anything about it. Oh yeah, we'll just vote them out. Well, the voting system is corrupt. Then we're not going to get them out. Well, we'll just make them change the voting system so it won't be corrupt. See, that's where we get this. What is that? Cognitive dissonance. Is that what it is? It's like for America, and I've talked about it many times before. You've got this people think the Congress is corrupt, etc. Well, at least was in 2016 you had a 11% approval rating for Congress in America. That was the approval rating for Congress mentioned in mainstream media everywhere, whatever. And yet the incumbent re-election rate. So incumbent re-elections mean the people who are already in office, the ones who have to get re-elected, how many of them become re-elected? You would think with the 11% disapproval rating, you have probably 11% get re-elected. No, it was 92 to 96% re-election rating for the incumbents. It makes no sense. And then people will go, well, it's because we got all this money in play. You know, it's whoever can raise the most money, they'll just get in office. And the Congress, well, they create a legislator where there's no limit. And so what we need to do is put pressure on them to reverse that, or actually, their thought is let's vote people in the office so they can change that. Or how about we'll just put pressure on the people in Congress to change that legislation so we can put people in office that so they can do things well. But the thing is, it goes against the entire purpose of Congress doing that in the first place. They want to have unlimited money because, well, they gain from it, and the chances of their re-election is going to skyrocket. So there's no incentive for them to reverse the legislation they enacted, and there's no pressure on them to change otherwise, and there's no one who's gonna come and replace them to overturn that legislative vote, because, well, now they control the money, they control how they get voted in, or maybe they don't even need to. The election's rigged anyway, so they know they can go and make whatever laws that they want without any repercussions. So there's nothing that the public can do except to punish the corrupt that are in power, and that's where very negatively reinforce that. The thing is, again, when I talked about how if I punch somebody in the stomach, wait for a reaction, they don't do anything, well, I know I could punch them in the stomach again. But if they pull out a gun and shoot me in the leg, I know I'm not going to punch them in the stomach again. But that's that drastic measure, right? But the thing is, if you start there and previous times in history where we've seen revolutions occur, that's what governments don't want. People in power don't want. They don't want the people to come and show up in arms to take them out of office because of their corruption. They want people to just be okay with it. And that's where we are now. People are okay with it. They're not going to go and get their guns and force the corrupt out of the office and put people, control the voting process to put people in that they want. And therefore, they're just going to keep doing it. It's just like, now, you don't have to go that full way, right? For example, if all it took was for me punching that person in the stomach, and instead of them taking out their gun, shooting me in the leg, they just punch me back in the stomach, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't like that either. So I probably won't put you in the stomach next time because I don't want to get punched in the stomach again. So they didn't have to take out their gun and shoot me in the leg. I already know that I probably don't want them to punch me in the stomach back. So it's almost like it doesn't have to go to the full extent of negative reinforcement or punishment for me to stop my behavior. So there's that measurement of what does it take for those in power who are corrupt to step down from it. But the thing is, we won't know that until we actually start enforcing some type of reinforcement feedback. So we've got the idea of we've got the psychology of humans and pretty much those that are cognitive enough to be have some behavior modifications, whether for certain animals that can be trained, such as dogs, maybe cats, some cats, horses, domesticated animals, pigs, whatever. Now, then we get into religious deities, where your feedback system ends at death, so we don't have a feedback system at the beginning or middle or anywhere we can perceive where we need to actually have a change. Hi, Grant Jarvis. So then we get to the point of, okay, let's just do whatever we want, because at the end of our life, nothing happens. Yet then a lot of people understand that mentality because it's presented to us. That's just kind of the scientific thought of the day. But then what's the point of those not going and following the herd when just following the herd just makes it easy? Like, for example, changing the entire system is a near impossibility, especially in one's lifetime. Do I expect all the corrupt people in the world, or at least in my country, in the United States, to step down or to get pushed out in my lifetime? No. But so why do I even try? Because there's no inherent gain for me. All it is loss, loss, and loss. There's no gain. There's possible gain for my offspring, but if my offspring just follow the herd in the first place, most likely they're going to be gaining and not losing anyway. So all I have to do is just say, hey, offspring, follow the herd. You're going to gain until the moment where you decide that you don't want to follow the herd and you're going to lose. And therefore, is that a genetic trait? I don't think so, because there's a lot of people out there that are genetically different than me, feeling the same way and following the herd. And therefore, what's the catch? There is no catch. There's no genetic marker that as far as the evolutionary standpoint makes sense. Otherwise, we would all have our family members closest to us feel the same way and do the same thing. Except what we notice is that no, unless you're a father who raised your kids, or a father or mother that raised your kids a certain way, then maybe. But do you and your siblings, or do you and your father or mother who raised you to follow the herd step out of it just like you have? No, and we don't see that at all. So this is where it all ends up as far as the different thing comes into play when we get into psychedelics. For me, it's mainly ayahuasca, which I've done 3 times, 3 separate times. I have not tried mescaline yet, or mushrooms, magic mushrooms, but the ayahuasca experience gave me a feedback system. Excuse me. All right, let me get some water. I have been coughing quite a lot recently. So my ayahuasca experiences gave me a feedback system. I didn't have to, well, in some ways I did have to die. Especially my second ayahuasca experience. And the thing is, these ayahuasca experiences, they teach you something. Something which you don't experience in your day-to-day or even year-to-year type of thing. It's a feedback system of, how can I best explain it? So my first ayahuasca experience, it's a feedback system of nature itself in some ways, right? So with all that's being done, it's like getting a sense of how nature is responding. It's a weird way to put it, because it's more of Mother Ayahuasca, how she's feeling, experiencing, and basically our actions, we see the result of it. All right. Rather than me punching someone in the stomach and then retaliating with a gunshot to my leg, it's more of, I punch them in the stomach and I see them cry and I feel their pain. And in return, I have this level of empathy where it's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that, and I don't want to do that again because I don't want to see you crying or hurt. It's that type of level of empathy where you realize that you're more than just some hitting machine. You're more than just this bully who just gets off on pain or power. You're actually something that has, empathy. So you don't have to have the person on the other end retaliate in some negative reinforcement or punishment, because what in actuality it is, you end up feeling the repercussions of their pain and their suffering, and that's enough for you to change. So it's more of a, so that's kind of like, you would never understand the hurt that occurs from this mother spirit without ayahuasca. You just take things for granted. But if you can feel that energy, negative emotion, negative feedback system from the psychedelic experience, why would, if you have this level of empathy, you wouldn't want to hurt this thing, this entity that you cannot explain, because you understand that there is suffering involved for it, and therefore why would you want to let it suffer? And then second ayahuasca experience is the finality of death. It's you get a feedback loop, right? You can finally think of the most torturous death experience you can experience, and once you've gone through that, you understand how painful that experience can be. Therefore, you don't want to go through it again. So, and there's a reason behind that. And now, when you experience that, you've got your end of death feedback system experience that religious doctrines can't offer. They don't tell you. They don't give you an explanation as to even why you would want to do that, just because of some deity. But in this experience, my second ayahuasca experience, the most torturous way of dying, and it's not just earth death, it's just total death. And you're alone, but you don't have to be, and that's the thing. No matter how powerful you are and alone, it's just to keep existing that way is just an unending pain and torturous experience, excuse me. So the idea of it is, well, you don't have to be so powerful. You can rely on others to help you and ensure that you don't have to try to keep yourself from this vibration away to nothingness. So within that type of feedback system, at least I got to experience death in the worst way possible, which is why I didn't take my third ayahuasca experience for months. So after reflecting on that and saying that, hey, there is something, even though I can't explain it, it's affected me. It's affected my outcome. Therefore, well, it doesn't matter to me the power that I have. I don't want to have to experience how powerful I am enough to prevent this vibration away from nothingness, or to submit to not having all this power is okay, because I don't have to face that totality of death. It's almost like the idea of what's that saying, the brighter the star, the faster you burn type of thing, right? It's that same kind of concept where you don't want to burn burn twice as bright, so you don't last half as long type of thing. It's that controlled burn, really, that you want to have, just that steady light, just more of a peaceful type of thing. But yeah, you get that finality of experience, that feedback system, and therefore it changes the way that I act. There's no reason, there's no religious deity behind it. There's nothing beneficial for me yet again in the evolutionary standpoint, but there is something that that I can relate to and understand. Therefore, the idea of this being humble with what I have, and not get carried away with the ego and power and things like that. So, and that in essence gives you more power. Which is funny, because you don't want to have all that power, but you realize by not wanting all that power, you can have that power, and therefore you don't have to worry about the repercussions of having that power, because you understand you can let it go when you want to, because you want to, and not just because you need to. It's weird. So here comes my third ayahuasca experience, and I get another feedback system of the aftermath of the finality of things and how it relates to everyone else. And again, it's not it's more of it relates to the psychology of me, but not in how I want to live my life in regards to others, and have to be reflective about and being more careful at eliciting a response I don't want to make unless I regret it. And when I do regret it, be genuinely sorry for doing that, because I could have handled it a different way. And not because of any material immediate gain, especially in this life, because all it does is make you humble. And in the herd mentality, by submitting and being humble and apologizing and forgiving is a mark of someone who's more considered weak, considered non-alpha, right? But that doesn't mean you can't be alpha. It's more of be genuine in how you want the world and others to be. Therefore, you want to be leading by example. When I want to be firm, I'm firm, but know that there's a reason behind my firmness. And then if I want to be soft, it's only because I don't have to be firm, type of thing. It's like I don't always have to be alpha when I know that those around me, I don't have to get to that level. So why be at that level all the time for everyone? I have to gauge the people, get to know them a little bit better, and give them a good foundation as far as what I'll accept and what I won't accept. But always starting off at the extreme level, yes, it may demonstrate something to the individual, and they may not do something again. But then again, like I said before, they're not sure why to that extreme they're being punished for something that they don't think is that egregious. Just like a dog being locked in the room, right, for 9-hour day, just because, they think they're being punished, but they don't know why, type of thing. But at least when you can exhibit some type of feedback system where it can be different. For example, my parents had a different way of reacting to my bad behavior. My mother, I always think my mother is more like a Jewish mother. It's like, what do you do? It just hurts my feelings. I'm crying. I hurt. And, why do you do this to me? What did I do to deserve this, type of thing? I'd be like, I'm sorry, Mom. I won't do it again. And then my father, on the other hand, is like, go up on the wall. Bap. It's like, yeah, I won't do that again. I don't want to get hurt. The thing is, when you get older, you can handle certain types of pain. It's like, yeah, I'll do it. I know I'm gonna get slapped or hurt, whatever, physically, but emotionally or physically, it's worth it. So I'll just take the punishment afterwards, because I know what the punishment is, and it's not that bad because I've gotten used to it. But then when the punishment is something that you can't handle emotionally or psychologically, because it's painful for you to witness hurting of an individual emotionally or physically, and it's like, you don't that almost hurts you more, right? So you've got different ways of giving some type of feedback system. But again, maybe there's just types of it has to be it's a fluctuation of things because things change. Like a 2.5-year-old may not understand. Like, for example, I act like I'm crying. Like my kid will get something that he likes to eat, and I go, like, I want it. Like, feed me the good thing, and he'll be like, no, right? Or he'll do that. He's gotten to the point where he'll give it to me so I can take a bite, and I'll say thank you, and he likes it, and he likes being able to share. But he also liked it when he would act like he's gonna give it to me, and he pulls away, and I just start acting like I'm crying, and he'd laugh, and he would just do more of that. So yeah, that's maybe not good for me because I'm rewarding his teasing behavior. But but yeah, if I was genuinely hurt, or like say he did that to my daughter would be genuinely sad that she couldn't have some of whatever he was having. So he might change his behavior based on that. So not everything has to be forced reinforcement and and to elicit change, because I think that's where we can work with different types of people. You've got people who have empathy. You don't have to reinforce their behavior or negative behavior with physical negative reinforcement. You can apply emphatic negative reinforcement, and they will change their ways. But then you have some people who don't have that level of empathy, and you do have to have some type of maybe physical reinforcement or some type, because that's how they would react. And that's I don't think that's a genetic thing, because it doesn't apply again to those who are closest to you genetically. It applies to just different types. Otherwise, we would see more families adhering to more of some society or cultural changes and gear towards one end, and more of the following the herd type of behavior too. Anyways, that's just kind of my thoughts. It would be nice to have this type of conversation with others, so we can throw some ideas back and forth, or some questions. Unfortunately, I'm just talking to myself, even though I don't have to. But who knows? Maybe in the future, things will change where I have more of a interactive audience. Let's say that. But yeah, so in summary, going over the psychology of humans and animals, cognitive animals who can exhibit changes in behavior based on positive and negative reinforcement, or elicit some cyclic behavior based on punishment, which if wrongly applied can have negative repercussions in behavior modification. But then we get into religion and religious deities and the feedback systems that aren't provided immediately. They're provided at the end of life, in which we have no idea whether we've done things right or wrong until then. And if there is some reincarnation type of event that occurs, it makes no sense to have our memories wiped or having amnesia from it, because then we don't know what we did right or wrong in our previous lives in order to know how we need to proceed in our current life. It just logically, it makes no sense to have it that way. And as far as the evolutionary nihilistic approach, or maybe atheistic approach to life, it makes no sense not to follow the herd in order to just have positive gain in the material and emotional state, to just follow one's I don't know, what would we call it? Follow our own, I guess, our own path, our own standard of right and wrong type of thing. I mean, so the idea of basically if if knowing is power, and we know that following the herd and keep going and gaining material to lead to physical and emotional contentment and happiness is the way to go, then why don't we keep going? Why do some of us just drop out? Why do we just go, no, that's not how I want to live my life, even though I know it's going to be the harder, more difficult road? It makes no sense, evolutionarily speaking, to do that. It makes no sense, even nihilistically, because if there's nothing afterwards, why suffer through life? So it's more of that thing. And then I went on towards the ayahuasca experiences, different types of consciousness experiences where we can have these type of feedback loops of what it feels as far as nature is concerned, or surroundings, environmental factors we don't necessarily regard in our current scientific materialistic way. For example, science doesn't say that there's some Mother Earth that has some human feelings or some type of emotional feeling type of thing, or anything metaphysical at all. Excuse me. And then there's the feedback system, what it is to experience death at the most torturous level, and then also what it means to interact with those around us and how it actually affects us, and not our physical realm, but of some other realm out there, which we still don't know about. I don't know about, or may not be able to even ever understand in this lifetime. But I still have that feedback system where I've experienced some form of it, and therefore it still affects me to make me want to change, to be better around others, and to make sure my choices are how I want them to be, and not because of how it makes me feel, but of how it makes others around me feel. And in that aspect, I don't have to worry so much about myself, or my ego, I guess, of me existing within my ego rather than my ego existing within me. It's weird. Anyways, thank you for joining me. It's been like an hour, 10 minutes, so it's long talk. It's like a soliloquy. I just wanted to get that out there because, again, if it's kind of in my head and I'm thinking about it all the time, and it's enlightening in some ways to me, it makes me reflect, and part of this is my reflection. None of this is scripted. If it was, I wouldn't be saying and oh and pause so much. There's that for you. Anyways, I'll probably see you later tonight, if not tomorrow. Anyways, I'll see you soon, and thank you for joining me if you're here. Thank you, Grant Jarvis, for chatting in chat, and I'll see y'all later.